Okay, so here's the next part. So moving on to the plant cells and tissue systems. So eukaryotic cells do have a lot of similarities. Um, However, there are some plant cells that have features that are not found in animal cells. So some of those features are for example, the primary cell wall, which surrounds the cell and provides structure to it. There's some plant cells that have a secondary cell wall, okay? And there's the cytoplasm of adjacent plant cells are connected by a structure called the plasmodesmata or plasmodesma for singular. Okay, so the plasmodesma is the one that connects the cytoplasm of adjacent plant cells. So it contains the cytoplasm and also segments of the smoothie R, okay, as you can see here. Plant cells also contain chloroplasts and large vacuoles that fill the cell's volume. The chloroplasts are what are involved in photosynthesis. When the plant is a non-photosynthetic plant, the cells have organelles that are similar to chloroplasts. So they're modified for storage of pigments, starch, oil, or proteins. They also have vacuoles, which contain an aqueous solution called cell sap, and these are used to store waste, water, and nutrients. So those would be similar to the lysosomes. For plant tissues, the plant tissues are grouped into tissue systems. So there's complex tissues and simple tissues. The simple tissues consist of only one type of cell, and the complex tissues contain several types of cells. And so the three tissue systems are the dermal tissue system, there's the ground tissue system, and the vascular tissue system. The dermal tissue system consists of the epidermis. So the main function of the epidermis is to provide protection, okay? But it also allows for gas exchange. So it allows for the carbon dioxide to exit the plant and carbon dioxide to enter the plant and oxygen to exit the plant. And then for the ground tissue system, that consists of several types of cells. So there's parenchyma cells, there's the collenchyma cell types, and then the sclerenchyma. Okay, and those have their own functions. So parenchyma is mainly for the storage and synthesis of sugars and other compounds. The collenchyma is mainly involved in support, and the sclerenchyma is mainly involved in protection. Then for the vascular tissue system, that consists of the xylem and the phloem. The xylem is involved in the transport of water and other nutrients from the roots to the shoot. Okay. And the phloem is involved in the transport of sugars, as well as other things like hormones and amino acids. Okay. But those can move in both directions. So they can move up to the shoot, or they can move from the leaves to the shoot and then eventually to the roots. So in either direction. And they also have a role in providing support for the plant. So the dermal tissue consists of the dermal tissue system consists of the dermal tissue. This is also called the epidermis. So this is like the skin of the plant. Okay. It's the outermost layer. And in the shoots, the primary function is to protect the plant. And in the roots, the primary function is to absorb water and nutrients. The epidermis is made of several different types of cell types. And so this is an example of a complex tissue. The epidermal cells uh, protect the plant, right? So they are the ones that produce a waxy layer that's called the cuticle. Okay? And because that waxy layer is hydrophobic, it helps it minimize water loss. And it also forms a barrier to protect the plant from things like viruses, bacteria, and spores from parasitic fungi. So that waxy cuticle, those are also important ingredients in things uh, like wax, like car wax or lipstick and things of that nature. What helps regulate the gas exchange and water loss is the structure known as the stomata. So these are pores that are either located underneath the plant for things like dicots. For monocots, they're located both uh, underneath and above and both sides. But these are pores that allow for the gas exchange still. They allow for carbon dioxide to enter the plant and oxygen to exit while it's conducting photosynthesis. The stomata, so it regulates the gas exchange and water loss, and it does that using these specialized cells called guard cells. So these cells will change shape depending on whether the plant wants to uh, increase gas exchange or decrease. And also, if the environment is too warm, then obviously it'll close those cells. The guard cells will close the stomata to prevent water loss. So it's a balance that the plant has to deal with. So if it wants to have gas exchange, it has to open the stomata. But if it's open when it's really hot, it'll also lose a lot of water. So if it's hot, usually the plants will close the stomata to prevent water loss. Okay. Then we also have these structures that are called trichomes. Trichomes are hair-like appendages that are that they're hair-like appendages that are specialized epidermal cells, and these perform various functions. Okay, so they come in different shapes, sizes, and depending on the type of plant, it'll have a different function. So some of the functions are it can help keep the plant surface cool by reflecting sunlight. It can also help reduce water loss by limiting transpiration. And then the barbs or toxins can be used to protect from herbivores. And then also, they can also be used to trap and digest insects. So again, this depends on the plant. So here you can see a close-up of trichomes. So they can either be hair-like structures like you see here, or they can be a multicellular structure like these here. Okay, so moving on to the ground tissue system. So most photosynthesis and carbohydrate storage takes place in the ground tissue system. And the ground tissue system is made up of ground tissue. So this tissue is made up of uh, three distinct tissue types. So there's the parenchyma, there's collenchyma, and then there's sclerenchyma. The parenchyma is a tissue that's composed of parenchymal cells. These cells have thin primary cell walls, and these are most abundant in leaves. So the parenchyma is the tissue that is the primary site of photosynthesis, because these are the sites where you have a lot of chloroplast. Okay. And in the roots, the parenchyma cells are used to store starch. Then the many parenchymal cells are also totipotent cells. So totipotent means that they retain the capacity to divide and develop into a completely new plant. So this allows the plant to be able to heal itself from damage and also it allows for the plant to reproduce asexually. Totipotent, the totipotency of the parenchyma cells is what allows gardeners to clone plants by making cuttings. Okay, because when the plants are cut, those parenchyma cells form a mass of undifferentiated cells called the callus. And for example, you place that callus in water or in a soil, it'll start shooting roots and form a new plant. So here you can see the parenchymal cells, which are the ones that house the chloroplast. So this is the site of photosynthesis. And the roots, they're mainly used for storage of starch. The parenchyma is a simple tissue, so it only has one cell type. These parenchyma cells have unevenly thickened primary cell walls, and this provides a flexible structural support to the actively growing plants, parts of the plant. The parenchyma is often found just under the epidermis of the stems, and especially outside the vascular bundles. So here you can see a cross section of a celery stalk. So when you're looking at a celery stalk, you're looking at the petiole of the plant, right? So if you guys remember, the petiole is a little stalk that connects the leaf blade to the stem of the plant. So here's a close-up of the string and cross section. So these are the parts that you're able to string off of a celery stalk, and those are made up of parenchyma cells. This is just one example. Okay, so now moving on to the sclerenchyma. So the cells of the sclerenchyma tissue have thin primary cell walls and thick, rigid secondary cell walls. The secondary cell walls contain tough, rigid linin as well as cellulose. The sclerenchyma is a complex tissue, so it has more than one tissue type. It has fibers and it also has sclerates. So the fibers are elongated and the sclerates are short with variable sizes and functions and protection. So here you can see the fibers in cross section. So you're looking at it head down. So after you cut it, you look at it from the top view. That's the cross section. And here you can see a sample of sclerates. Okay, now moving on to the vascular tissue system. So the vascular tissue system is made up of the two complex tissues, the xylem and the phloem. The xylem as I already mentioned, is the one that conducts water and nutrients from the root system to the shoot system, and the phloem conducts sugars, hormones, and amino acids uh, from the roots to the shoots or from the shoots to the roots. So it works in both ways. Okay, so we'll continue with the xylem structure on the next video.